You want to take the steps necessary to go in and get your body primed before you stretch and try to get more flexible. And the same thing goes with writing. And now that goes back to what I was talking about with the outline, that you have it there, but it's not that fleshed out. But those are the steps. It would be similar to warming up the body before you try to stretch. Well, you're warming up the story before you try to dive right into it with that shortened outline. But again, I wouldn't get too deeply involved in the details of the outline. It would be the same thing as doing try and do a full-on stretching routine to improve flexibility when you're not exactly sure where you're trying to go yet. Let the body guide you, and then let your creativity guide you while you're writing that novel, and you'll go much, much further, both, with the stretching and range of motion and with the story itself. Welcome to the Creative Cynergy podcast, where we are talking mind-body wellness for writers and other creative professionals. My name is Coach Cyn, and I am your guide on this wellness journey. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about flexibility, but not just flexibility for the body, but also how it relates to your writing. Let's get into it. When you think about flexibility, a lot of different things come to mind. First and foremost, obviously, it's the physical aspect of it, which means you can move more freely without extended amounts of pain and further, within your stretching. But also, being flexible means you can make changes, like almost changing on the dime, because you're flexible with your choices. A lot of times writers get stuck, not only physically, but also within the process of their writing because they're not flexible enough. And we're going to dive into both of those topics. But first and foremost, let's talk about why flexibility matters. So as I mentioned, flexibility does mean different things. It's not just about being able to reach and touch your toes. It's about adaptation. And when it comes to writing a novel, it's the ability to make changes within a character, a scene, or the overall scope of the novel without being too tied to the outcome of it. Because more often than not, especially within your first draft, you're going to throw away some of your favorite scenes to begin with. And that's why they always say kill your darlings, because you get really attached to certain aspects of writing your novel, but sometimes in the very end draft, they're not going to remain. So flexibility of writing means to be able to adapt to those situations as well. Now let's dive a little bit deeper into flexibility of the body. When we talk about flexibility in the body, we're talking about the muscles, the muscle fascia, the ligaments, tendons, and their ability to be pliable. Now, mobility is also another big issue when it comes to being more flexible, but mobility is more about the movement, whereas flexibility is going to be more range of motion. Both are very, very important, but when it comes to flexibility, when it comes down to both of those, it takes inspired action to continually improve your flexibility and your mobility so that you don't remain stiff. And the stiffness happens, like I said, it comes from staying in a fixed position for very long hours and not getting into other positions that will open up the body. So the fixed positions being sitting in front of a computer screen, sitting in front of a TV screen, sitting in your car, a very, very lot of sitting that we do throughout our day. And we're in that fixed position for extended periods of time without getting into different positions that will really open up the body and relieve the stress and tension that it's under throughout your workday. And you could just be sitting there gaming and not really thinking that you're under stress, but if you're sitting in that fixed position, the body's going to start to cramp up and stay that way. But if you don't take the measures to improve on the movement patterns. And that's what we're trying to talk about here. So when we talk about flexibility in your writing, think of it like this. The flexibility of your body is a tight hip. The flexibility of your not having flexibility in your novel is being stuck on a plot point because you just can't move past what it is you were trying to say. This is how the two go hand in hand. Now, flexibility in writing is just what I said before. You need to be willing to adjust and almost adjust on the fly. If you get into a really good state of flow while you're writing, you need to be able to pivot quickly and don't dwell too much on the set outcome that you had in your mind. That's why when I outline, and I never used to outline before, I was what they call a pantser, but I've found outlines have been very, very useful, especially when writing a longer series. The only thing is, when I outline, I don't put too much detail into it, because if you get too attached to those details and you've written a full synopsis of each and every chapter, you're going to want to instinctively stick to that, because that is sort of your roadmap. If you just put in the details that you need, it gives you more freedom and you're more fluid and more flexible to make changes on the fly that will better suit your story. So this is where I talk about not being married to the results so much and being able to trim the fat, as it were, when you are trying to stay flexible with your writing. The other good thing about that is when you have developed really good characters and the story is flowing along, let them surprise you, because more often than not they will, and they'll take you in directions that you weren't actually expecting to go in the first place with the story. So it's actually kind of fun, and it goes back to, being more pliable in your body. It gives you more opportunities to create a masterpiece, whether that's in your physique or that's the novel that you're writing. So when you're trying to improve flexibility in your body, you never want to force the issue, because that can lead to injury. What you want to do is to get into a routine of slowly increasing that flexibility and form so that you can get more pliable. The same thing goes with your writing. If you try to force an issue that really doesn't fit into the plot line, it's going to somewhat injure your story because it doesn't actually fit there. So you never want to force either issue. You want to take the steps necessary to go in and get your body primed before you stretch and try to get more flexible. And the same thing goes with writing. And now that goes back to what I was talking about with the outline, that you have it there, but it's not that fleshed out. But those are the steps. It would be similar to warming up the body before you try to stretch. Well, you're warming up the story before you try to dive right into it with that shortened outline. But again, I wouldn't get too deeply involved in the details of the outline. It would be the same thing as doing try and do a full-on stretching routine to improve flexibility when you're not exactly sure where you're trying to go yet. Let the body guide you, and then let your creativity guide you while you're writing that novel, and you'll go much, much further, both, with the stretching and range of motion and with the story itself. Let's take a moment to really dive into the mind-body connection, and this is exactly what we're talking about here, not only on this episode, but on this channel as well, because stress will tighten both your body and your mind. So the whole experience of trying to, combine writing and wellness is to open up the body, to get it more energized and more productive so that you can be more creative. Tight muscles and stress muddy your thinking. It shuts down the creative pipeline. So you want to be more free and open when you are actually sitting down to write. And that comes with staying in tune with your body and keeping it active. Think of it this way. Tight muscles are the same as rigid thinking. When you warm up, you can use free writing. Stretching can be like revising. And your rest days, for both body and mind, take creative breaks. Because when you overtrain, you burn out. And that goes for both body and mind. Let's take a minute to really lean into that creative breaks and relaxation for both body and mind. I myself have been known to run hard on both aspects of it, and that actually can lead to burnout. The reason why you want to take those breaks is so you can get refreshed. It's like as if you are dipping into a pool of your creativity or your energy, and the output that it's either for your body or it goes onto the page. When you start draining that well too much and you get down to the end of it, it's not going to do you any good to try to siphon, more creativity or more energy from this tiny little puddle. You need it to be replenished so you can go diving back in, and then you have the ability to go full force and be more creatively productive or more energized in your workout routine and flexibility and range of motion, mobility. So you never want to get too low in your energy reserves, both body and mind. You need those creative rest breaks to open up new movement and new ideas. The good news is there are practical habits that you can use daily to improve both flexibility in body and writing. Starting with the body, it really only takes a couple of minutes a day, but definitely daily. You want to stay consistent. So it's about 5 to 10 minutes of actively working on your flexibility. Now, this isn't to say we're diving into a really structured, difficult yoga experience. This is simple, easy, actionable stretching movements that you can do right at your desk even, and by taking breaks and just, again, opening up the body and letting it sort of breathe from being in that fixed position for so long. And just do that routinely to start, improving your flexibility. Honestly, you can even stretch directly from your chair, but it is really conducive to your overall flexibility and health if you get up and you move around. So before you even start your writing session or whatever it is that you're trying to create, I would stretch beforehand so you get into the habit of it immediately. And then maybe set a timer next to your computer or on your desk somewhere. In fact, set it somewhere far away so you have to get up and go and get it. And this will give you your rest breaks in between so that you remember, hey, I got to get up and I got to move around and I got to stretch and get my flexibility going. Now, the way you can improve flexibility in your writing is, like I said, immediately know that that first draft is not going to stay that way. It is never going to be perfect, no matter how hard you try. You can rewrite the first page over and over and over again. It's never going to be perfect, even when you decide to publish it. I have novels right now where I could go back in and make changes, but eventually you're going to have to let it go. So just know that the first draft, and this probably is going to sound harsh, but this is some of the best advice I ever heard. Write for the wastebasket. That essentially means that first draft is going in the can, parts of it anyway. But that is where the editing process comes into, and we'll get into that further down the line. But just know that it's not going to be a masterpiece right out of the gate, but you can't fine-tune something that doesn't exist. The important part of it is to get the words down on the page. Now, one of the ways that when you're writing a novel, you kind of get stuck is you're too linear, and the way that you can get out of that being stuck, write scenes out of order. I know it seems really weird, but a lot of authors do this, and I didn't like it at first because I like going from A to B. But if you get really stuck on a scene, jumping around to different chapters can actually be helpful, and then you go back in and you fill details later. Because again, you're just writing the first draft to get it down out of your head onto the page. It can be fine-tuned later on. This is where you get flexible with it. And when you're stuck on a particular scene, this is where those movement breaks come in. It helps you to clear not only your body, but your mind. And when you step away from the desk for a little while and come back, you have a clearer picture of what it is you were trying to say in the first place. Progress for flexibility in both body and writing comes from consistency, not from forcing the issue. As I said before, if you try to force yourself into a fixed position without warming up or your body being used to it, you run the risk of injury. A similar situation happens when you're trying to force something into your plot. It kind of kills your creativity because that doesn't belong there. So it's sort of like an injury bleeding onto the page. Just stay consistent with your methods and you'll improve your flexibility, both body and mind. Try to stay patient with your process, and this will relate to more creative output and better overall flexibility. To sum up what I was talking about here, again, the body and the mind go hand in hand, which is why this is all about mind-body wellness. A flexible body supports a flexible mind. And when your mind is more flexible in your writing, it creates better stories and more creative output. It's all cyclical. It all goes together. And you'll find that you're running more fine-tuned in not only your health and wellness, but also your creativity. So the way to start inputting this into your life, like I said, you take those movement breaks, you make sure that you're stretching, don't stay in a fixed position too long, and that goes for your writing too. Don't stay fixated on a specific scene or plot line too long. It's better to just let it go and then get into your movement breaks and then come back to it, or to write scenes out of order. So these are some of the things that you can try to start to be more flexible in your body and mind, because your story moves better when you do. That's what I have for you today. Make sure that you like, subscribe if you're on YouTube. Make sure you leave a comment below on some of the flexibility routines that you like to try, or even what you do when you're stuck writing your novel. Share this with some other writers that you know that need to hear it. And we'll see you back here next time on the Creative Cynergy Show.